Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, I just got off of work and I want to do a comparison between the Gibson Les Paul Jr. and the Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s. Now I quickly want to start things off like I do in all of these comparison videos by saying YouTube videos are fantastic to get like a different perspective on maybe a potential purchase that you might be making. It's great to hear it in someone else's hands, albeit with someone else's choices and what they're playing through, and the settings they've chosen. It's a great way to get a different opinion as well, and it's, you know, great to build a little bit of excitement over a potential purchase. But don't let a goofball like me or anyone else on YouTube tell you what to buy. Make sure you're not using these videos as like the sole decision on why you're buying a guitar. You could really like the way that it looks, the way that it sounds in a video or something like that, but then you go and buy the guitar and you don't bond with it. So always, 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 if you can, go and try out the guitar for yourself. And when you do that, try out other guitars too. Just make sure that it's the right decision for you. But I do have 5 sound samples today, and then we're going to talk about spec differences and just a little bit of opinion that I have between both of these guitars. All right, so now that we've heard those 5 sound samples, let's get into like the spec similarities and differences. So both of these guitars are, yes, gloss nitrocellulose finished. Both of these guitars have a mahogany back. One of these guitars does not have a maple top. So basically, the Les Paul Jr. here is what's called a slab mahogany body. So it's basically the back of a Les Paul without the carved maple top on it. So that's why when you look at them, it's kind of looking like it's missing part of it. So yeah, just all mahogany body, and this has a carved maple top. Both of these also have mahogany necks, albeit the Junior here has the Fat 50s neck style. It's a little thicker, whereas the standard 60s has the 60s slim taper. So that's just like millimeters thicker than a regular slim taper neck. They both also have rosewood fretboards. However, we get trapezoid inlays here, dot inlays on here. This, the 60s, is bound with the fret nibs. This is not bound, and there's no fret nibs to be found. Taking a look at the front of the headstock, both of these have the inlaid Gibson logo with the silk-screened Les Paul logo on it. The standard 60s says Les Paul model. The Junior says Les Paul Jr. On the rear of the headstock is where you're gonna really take a look at the tuners. The standard 60s here has Grover tuners. They're the roto grips. They're non-locking, but if you want to get locking tuners, super easy to just buy them and install. They're like ridiculously easy to do so. On the Les Paul Jr. here, we do have the Gibson Deluxe Vintage Tuners, the Clouson style, and these have the little tiny oval bean buttons on them. They're the exact same as the Gibson Vintage Deluxe that have like the tulip style and stuff like that. They just get different buttons on them. Both have Graphtec nuts. Both of these are also part of the original collection. What does that mean? That means there's no PCB or anything like that. So the electronics here, they're the Audio Taper CTS potentiometers. More than likely they are Gibson branded. And as well, they are hand soldered with orange drop capacitors. Having like a semi-premium capacitor like an orange drop is very, very useful for P90s, especially since it's only one single dog-eared P90 here, so the tone control and the volume control, but the tone control is the one that kind of goes with the capacitor. It's very important that has something to kind of help it along. And as far as pickups, the Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s has it used to be called the 61R and 61T. They've changed the name to the 60s Burst Buckers, or sometimes the 60s Tribute Burst Buckers or Burst Bucker Tributes. It's marketing. It's all the same pickups. And the Junior, we already said, comes with the dog-eared P90. As far as bridges, we have the ABR1 loaded, although it's metal doweled rather than, set directly into the wood, tunematic with a stop bar, whereas the Junior here has the non-compensated wraparound. The non-compensated wraparound, I still say to this day, is more comfortable than the lightning bar that comes on the SG Junior and SG Specials. As far as weight differences here, it's a little obvious, right? The Junior is going to be a lot lighter than the standard 60s. Both of these are non-weight relieved. However, there's a lot more weight that's added with the bridge and the pickups and the maple top than just the, slab mahogany body, a single dog-eared, and a single piece bridge. That's really the important specs that we're looking at there. What I like to do at this point, because like watching this video, it's really hard to properly compare the two. A lot of people will say, oh, apples to oranges, but it's always a great decision to hear what one guitar sounds like against another guitar, even if they're different, especially if you're, looking to maybe add one as a second guitar, or, saying, I really like the standard 60s, but a Junior is going to make me a better player, and I've always liked Juniors. So it's kind of rough doing the comparisons between the two, because you kind of have to show how you're kind of getting the tones that you're getting on a Junior to kind of make do for the fact that it's only a single pickup. So if you're listening to the sound samples there, a lot of things may seem like they're geared towards the Junior, but it's just me trying to show you how you kind of offset and discover how to do things with only a single pickup. And that's the first thing I want to talk about here. When it comes to Les Paul Juniors or SG Juniors, or single pickup guitars, you generally hear two things. I mean, there's other things you can hear, but the most common things that you hear, there's two of them. First one is, it's a rocker, because it's a rock machine is what people call it. And the other thing is, a Junior will make you a better player. And to be honest, this guitar and the SG Junior that I used to own, they taught me a lot. And they taught me that I thought I knew what I was doing, kind of a deal. And I thought that I was really good with the tone controls. And it, taught me that really I wasn't. I was kind of sort of in the middle of decent. Somewhere along the lines to decent. So basically what I used to do, I used to throw my Gibsons or whatever in the middle position, and then for leads. And then what I would do is I would start to dial back the volume on the neck a little bit, and then start to dial back the tone on the neck a little bit. And what I would always find is if a lead tone is not working for me, if I do that, I can usually find something that's a little bit more creamy, gets a little more of that low end without kind of getting too much in the way. So I thought, yeah, I'm great. And then I got two Juniors, and wow, okay, it really changes you. What ends up happening is you try and find how to sort of get a neck tone out of it. It doesn't give you a neck tone, just so you know. However, what it does is when you bring it to, what I've always done is either 6 or 5 for an offset sort of a middle position, and then between 2 and 4 for an offset neck kind of sound. And it doesn't sound exactly like it, but what it does is it makes me go, wow, I can keep this thing at 4 or keep this thing at 6, and it sounds exactly like what I want it to sound like. So owning a Junior, people do say, it's a rocker. Sure, but when they say owning a Junior is going to make you a better guitar player, that's what they mean. You're going to learn how to properly use the tone controls and properly use the volume controls. But of course, it's really hard to deny the immediacy of having 2 pickups, because now you have 3 positions, and especially when you have 2 volumes and 2 tones, that's really amplifying the tonal options that you can get, because you can put it in the middle and start blending. So there's something to be said over that. But after owning this, I can control this a whole heck of a lot better. And as far as playing wise, I'm someone who does enjoy a bit of heft in the playing. So it's really hard for me to sit here and lie to you and say that I like the Junior more than I like a Les Paul Standard. That's just not the way that I am, and that's just not where my preferences lie. I really do love having a Tune-o-matic with a stop bar in it. That's just, I don't know what it is, but that's really what I'm most comfortable playing with. So, a Junior with that type of setup would really help, but at the same time, there's definitely a weight difference here. And as far as my preferences go for P90s, I really love the sound. It's really hard to beat a dog-eared bridge P90, or just a regular P90 in the bridge. But there's something to be said about the soul that you can get out of a neck P90. And as far as neck pickups go, that's kind of my favorite. I do definitely think that a neck P90 beats a neck humbucker. But depending on what sound you're going for, I do find that a bridge humbucker generally does beat the tone out of a P90. However, that's not always the case, because P90s are extremely spanky, and if you're not looking for high gain or a lot of driven tones, then a P90 is generally going to beat a humbucker most times. A P90, as far as driven tones and high gain. I find people think it can't do it. It definitely can, and in some cases it can do it better than a humbucker. But just for me, I think that's mostly the case in a studio scenario rather than a live scenario, because P90s, you're definitely going to be using a noise gate to help control things, and most noise gates start to suck out some of the dynamics in a P90. So just sort of like a single coil as well. You kind of lose that top end, and then there's just some things that happen with a noise gate. So in a studio scenario, you can really control things that way without using a noise gate. And that's really where I find for high gain, the P90s work best. And playing rhythm on both of these, it's really down to preference. When it comes to the non-compensated wraparound bridge, I don't know what it is. A lot of times, like, it's really hard to control your tension, whereas with a stop bar, you can, bring it down towards the body, and you can generally get a little more tension in your strings. With the wraparound, your real choices there would be to start upping your string gauge, and that's really where you're going to get a little more tension in the playing. But there's something to be said about just the direct feel when you're playing with a wraparound bridge, as opposed to a tune-o-matic. I don't know what it is. It's just something that it feels like it translates a little more vibrancy in your playing. So you're going to feel that in your hands. The audience isn't going to feel that, but there's definitely something to be said about it. And as far as playing leads, it's really hard to narrow it down. It's really, both of these are extremely comfortable. I think I would give the edge personally, preference-wise, to the tune-o-matic. But there's definitely, with that added extra vibrancy that you get, or vibrations that you get from a wraparound bridge, especially the non-compensated, and the fact that when you're bending with it, and the string sort of slides a little with it, and then it kind of comes back down without, really going into like tuning stability issues. There's just something to be said about that, and it really does work on quite a few different levels. Other than that, they're the same shape. So like, access is really going to come down to, what you're used to playing. I mean, this is definitely a thinner body than this. So, I mean, I guess you could look at it as the maple top could be cumbersome, but more than likely not. All right, so that is all I have to say there. It is a rocker. It will make you a better player. But I can understand if you say this is just an absolute classic and a go-to for a lot of people over a junior or a special. But no matter what, you cannot deny a Les Paul Junior. Thanks for watching.